Thanks so much, Mark. Thanks so much for asking me to be here and to talk about my favorite subject. But before I launch into that favorite subject, I'd like to digress just for a few minutes because there's a second favorite subject for me. You see, spring has arrived, and to Americans like me, spring means baseball. My wife, Vicki, and I love baseball. Our team, the Boston Red Sox, play 162 regular season games a year. That's almost every day from April to November, usually with between 20 and 50,000 people in attendance for each game and millions more watching TV and stream broadcasts. I believe that this devotion has its roots in the fact that generation after generation, almost every American played baseball as a child with his parents. This game, played at the highest levels by professionals, is nevertheless a game we more strongly associate with family picnics, folklore, nostalgia. It's a subtle, complex game with hundreds of rules and lots of gray area. The referees are constantly in a position to make interpretations and judgment calls. It's a game where being an expert requires tremendous dedication to baseball scholarship, and people are keenly aware of each other's baseball IQ. The mystery of the game is exemplified by the fact that even its greatest professional teams consistently lose almost as many games as they win. And the dimensions of every baseball field are absolutely unique. It's really more of an art form than an athletic sport. Many of its greatest players don't even appear to be athletes. Yet, it's become synonymous with American culture, and this happened not by chance, but by choice. The choice was made by people who were among the first to love the game over a century ago, people who not only actively promoted the game, but played it with their kids. The natural growth of its popularity, nourished by family and community, continues to this day. To me, baseball provides a beautiful and effective model for the arts in our world. Joy and play and family are the key words, and participation, of course, is essential. And yes, the arts are important. Yes, we should fight over state funding, demanding respect. Yes, the arts should be taught alongside other academic subjects at school. The children must eat their broccoli. However, I think we can find more inspired ways of helping make participation in the arts a more natural, joyful, playful part of family and community life, for good health and well-being, for fun, like baseball. Okay, I'll get down to business now. My talk today is entitled AI, Artificial Intelligence, UBI, Universal Basic Income, and LVB, Ludwig van Beethoven. Optimism today is unfashionable. It's something people used to think of as a kind of American thing. So just as a small protest to Trump and Brexit, allow me, if you will, to be proudly and purposefully old-fashioned and arguably a little naive for at least the next 20 minutes or so. Many people prepare for the future by imagining the worst-case scenario. This may be sensible, but without the counterbalance of also envisioning great opportunity, we often miss those opportunities when they present themselves. So let's for once imagine how we might prepare for a really positive future for the world in general and for music in particular. Imagine, if you can, an alternative vision to the dystopian future we are repeatedly bombarded with by Hollywood films and science fiction novels, try to imagine a positive future where AI, artificial intelligence, is not only more capable than humans for managing and growing our manufacturing and financial sector, but also for fulfilling many of our service needs. Humans would be unnecessary for working most traditional jobs. Hard currency created by the success and investments of companies run by AI would be taxed. Cash would flow into the coffers of governments. And finally, we, the people, would need to decide how to use the money. At this point, the long-imagined pipe dream of UBI, Universal Basic Income, is now not only possible, it's inevitable. For those of you unfamiliar with UBI, it's more or less free money, no strings attached, in the form of a monthly check from your government. We are closer to this than you think. Obviously, there are huge logistical problems to solve before we will experience anything like this on a wide scale. According to Oxfam, 89% of the world's wealth in 2017 was hoarded by only 1% of the world's people. Nevertheless, quite a bit of that cash still found its way to the world's most needy. According to World Bank figures and the New York Times, at present, an average of 250,000 fewer people live in extreme poverty worldwide every day. This is profoundly inspiring. If this trend continues, we'll not only have much more leisure time, but we'll also need to ask ourselves some tough questions like, does work have a purpose in itself? Is the distinction between a vocation and a profession necessary? Is competition necessary for ambition? Can life in a society without winners and losers, or without financial risk, have meaning? Meaning. A word I believe will replace the word survival as the most important in the English language. Many great figures of the past exemplified the essence of the word meaning. For Beethoven, meaning was thrust upon him. The despair he suffered due to his ever-increasing deafness is unimaginable. And the isolation which resulted must have been debilitating. Of course, it was that isolation which made it possible for him to evolve internally at a much faster pace than the world around him. By the time he was writing his late quartets in the 1820s, his mind seemed to be already in the 20th century. To me, he used his psychological suffering not only as creative energy and material for self-expression, but also as a kind of cathartic therapy, a means for self-healing. This makes Beethoven a great model for how music making can help us overcome suffering, improve our health, find meaning and happiness. Music making is a powerful healing force, and I would like to see it play a more central role in our wider society's health programs. A role similar, perhaps, in some way, to that of yoga, but in my opinion, much more far-reaching. I believe that the tremendous popularity of yoga could be a useful model as well for the arts in the future, predominantly for the sake of individual wellness and quality of life. Yoga for millions of people across the world has become as essential to good health as diet and exercise. For me, music making can play the exact same role and more. Like yoga, it inspires and focuses my mind and helps with mind-body coordination and harmony. But unlike yoga, music making is emotional. It is pure self-expression. It is a true mirror of the soul and mind, and therefore essential for self-knowledge. Furthermore, in a way, more like baseball than yoga, music making can become the woven fabric connecting generation to generation and family to family. It can connect families to their communities and communities with one another. As economies grow and people have more leisure time, no longer fearing poverty or destitution, more people will choose to participate in the arts to improve the quality and give meaning to their lives. We should do everything possible now to hasten the coming of this new role for music and music education. Self-expression isn't just a human compulsion. It is the necessary ingredient in a democracy. Beethoven was a champion of democracy and the rights of the individual. He was also music's first autobiographer. His passion for symbolically telling his own story through music was in fact revolutionary. No longer was art to be merely a representation of some transcendent ideal. The human being himself was not only the creator, he was the subject. The entire art world has followed Beethoven's bold example since his death, to the point where we now think of art and self-expression as synonymous. I personally believe that everyone can be an artist, because everyone, by this definition, has both his unique story to tell and the inalienable human right to self-expression. And let us happily remind ourselves that creating art and teaching people to create art are two vocations which will never, ever be replaced by AI. Andy Warhol once said that in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. In spite of the fact that many of the world's greatest artists are famous and have spent their lives coveting fame, it is obviously not fame which makes art important. Personally, I believe it's all in the doing, participation. Making art and teaching others to make art is in itself the greatest purpose of art, in my opinion. Of course, we will always celebrate our great artists, cheer on our great orchestras, and swoon to our great voices, but let's let the world's professional arts institutions and the elite degree programs at universities and conservatories be enclaves of this kind of meritocracy. For all others, I say, let's teach music like yoga instructors, for the sake of health, meaning, happiness, free from the painful dualities of success and failure, winning and losing. No one takes yoga in order to become a great yogi. When my father was 12, he discovered Beethoven. The miracle of technology brought weekly radio broadcasts by Arturo Toscanini and the NBC Orchestra into his working-class immigrant neighborhood of Weehawken, New Jersey, from the 1940s onwards. When he was 13, he asked his mom if she would buy him a clarinet. She saved pennies in secret from the family food budget and eventually presented him with an instrument. Later, upon graduation from high school, working odd jobs and serving 4 years in the military made it financially possible for him to eventually receive both his bachelor's and his master's degrees from the Juilliard School and continue his studies at Columbia University. By the time he got his doctorate from Columbia, it was 1967. I was 7 years old. We were living in subsidized housing in Harlem, and he was driving a taxi. Eventually, his dream job was offered to him. He would teach band instruments to children aged 12 to 14 at a middle school in one of the most poverty-stricken and dangerous neighborhoods in America, the South Bronx in New York City. He committed himself to that job for nearly 40 years. As I was growing up, I often thought about his dedication to his students, wondering if all his hard work really made a difference to them. Of course, now we have unequivocal evidence from research done at Northwestern University in Chicago and others in the field of neuroscience, proving that, in fact, only 2 years of participatory music study produce an irreversible transformation in parts of the brain in ways which dramatically improve the brain's performance in many fields other than music. I doubt my dad ever believed any of his students would go on to become professional musicians, but he believed playing music would empower them. What I saw as a kid was that the band room at my dad's school was simply the kids' favorite place to be. And playing music was simply their favorite thing to do. They cut class on all the other subjects just to come to the band room to play all day. Obviously, school, music, education matters, especially for financially challenged families. We are lucky in English-speaking countries to use the same word for child's play as we do for music play. Shinichi Suzuki was right when he required parents to learn violin and play together with their children. What kid would eat his broccoli if his parents refused? I'll go one step further. Adult education, in my view, should be the primary step. In the future, I'm envisioning more and more adults will be looking for new and meaningful ways to spend their leisure time. I call on the world's higher education institutions, our universities and conservatories alike, to not only establish, expand, and promote more adult music programs now, but to proactively send graduate student teachers out into the neighborhoods, the workplaces, the shopping malls, offering adults introductory music lessons, inviting them to sign up for the programs at their school. I believe this will help prepare for a future which will not only offer great opportunities for more and more music teachers in the arts, it will redefine the whole purpose of art itself. Let's get ahead of that curve so we can seize those opportunities when they arise. I'm very happy to now introduce you to some wonderful, inspiring young people. Each is poised to help bring music into the lives of human beings across our planet. I am privileged to call myself their teacher, and I am as infinitely excited about their future as I am about the future. Michelle Unix, Abigail Jane Young, Kyle Chung, Shannon Merciel, and Joe Stanley, please join me. Thank you all for listening to my words. We would now like to play. The music is by Bob.